Hi, I'm Christy. Today I want to talk about understanding physical versus mental abilities. Over the years of writing this blog, I found myself subconsciously breaking special needs down into two different groups: physical disability and mental impairment. Now, I'm sure others would break things down differently and probably even into more categories, and I could. But to keep things simple, I tend to just use these two broad categories. Now, defining the word disability can be tricky. I ran across this article on easterseals.com that defines disability this way. Quote, disability is defined as any visible, invisible, emotional, social, and educational challenges that are a part of normal everyday life. Disability can refer to a medical diagnosis, a barrier, and or a person's identity, end quote. Now you can find a link to that whole article over on the blog. That's at www.havenofhopeforme.com. This originally posted in November of 2021. Now, I really like this article, and I highly recommend reading through. It's really quick. I especially appreciated two parts. First, the acknowledgement that the definition of the word disability is changing as society changes, and also acknowledging that people differ on how they prefer to be referred to. So they recommend that you adjust how you speak based on how each individual sees him or herself. Now, personally, I see physical disabilities as something that is a physical part of the body that doesn't work in a typical manner, or maybe not at all. Blindness, being deaf, maybe a deformed or non-working limb. You get the idea. On the other hand, mental impairment is a lowered mental capacity. Typically, this means a lower IQ. Many times, this can't be seen physically at first glance. However, it becomes readily apparent as soon as you start talking to them or you watch how they behave. Sometimes a person can have both a physical disability and mental impairment. Now, in my mind, there's a big difference between the two, and I differentiate it, at least in my mind, like this. Physical disabilities require accommodations and or modifications to be able to perform everyday tasks successfully. However, in many cases, the individual then leads a quote-unquote normal life because they're fully able to hold down a job or drive a car or take care of themselves. For example, when I was in high school, I had a deaf friend. She learned to drive a car when she was 16, just like everyone else. I was pretty impressed at the time. Okay, I'm still impressed. But I also realized she was fully capable of driving. Yes, she had to be more aware of her surroundings, but she learned how to compensate for her lack of hearing. And as far as I know, she was a successful driver. Now, that example demonstrates how I see physical disabilities. They don't keep a person from fully participating in typical activities that are age appropriate. Adjustments may need to be made, but once they're made, life continues on normally. On the other hand, mental disabilities dramatically change the course of life, and really the life of the entire family. Many times, mental impairment means that the individual never functions at their birth age level. For example, H is almost 22 years old. However, he still functions at an early to mid elementary level. That's about where he reads, and those are the kind of shows that draw him in, the preschool to elementary age shows. Now, interestingly, he understands YouTube videos about topics that he's interested in. Cars, channels about his games, you get the idea. Regardless of what that target audience's age is. Since I don't watch them, and he usually watches them in his room or on headphones, it's possible that he doesn't pick up everything that's said in them, and occasionally we get proof of that. But he talks about them in enough detail that he obviously understands what they're saying. Maybe it's just because he watches them over and over again. And oh wait, let's watch them once or twice more just to make sure that we've caught everything in them. Now, most of AJ's friends have some level of mental impairment. They usually have at least one other issue as well. Sometimes they don't speak very clearly. Other times they have behavior issues. But here's the thing. Almost all of them have something endearing about them that draws you to them. Okay, some more than others, but that just makes them like every other person in the world. And as a general rule, I'd say that his friends are very sweet kids. Yeah, I still call them kids. And they're always entertaining to be around. Now, over the years of writing this blog, I continue to find myself focusing more and more on the mental disability side of the issue. I think there's probably a few reasons for that. First, physical disabilities don't impact mental ability. This means that a person with a physical disability is able to understand and function without the same kind of assistance that someone with a mental disability requires. Yes, they still need assistance. I'm not sure how to explain what's so clear in my mind. Secondly, my personal experience falls more on the mental impairment side. While there are some things that AJ is unable to do physically, it's definitely his mental impairment that impacts the majority of our decisions for him. And finally, somehow to me, mental impairment has a greater impact on everyday life. Now, I'm sure that there are plenty of people and families who would disagree with me on that, and I can respect that. But mental deficits can keep an individual from ever being able to perform everyday tasks. And it means that there likely be things that they never understand, parts of life that they may never be able to participate in. Now, regardless of the kind of disability, I still maintain that special needs, or disability, whichever term you prefer to use, complicates life. It's not necessarily a bad thing, it just is. But it also brings an appreciation for things that many others miss precisely because of the extra effort needed to get through life with special needs. Okay, so I'm rambling now, so I'm just going to stop, but I'd love to hear your thoughts. And that leads me to this week's question. How do you define disability? What categories do you find yourself using? I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can leave me a comment below, or you can leave me a comment over on the blog. Again, that's at www.havenofhopeforme.com. This originally posted in November of 2021. If you prefer, you can also email me at Christy, CHRISTY, at havenofhopeforme.com. I'm differentiating among disabilities, but embracing them all so that I can continue to say that life is good and there is never a dull moment.